Hi everyone, how are you? It's Gary again. Hey look, we're back at the Virago. Now we got the tank on, we're just waiting on the pinstriping around here. But while it's off, I was doing the carbies as well, so we're waiting on the carbies to come. Now I noticed in a lot of the US or European ones on this side cover here, underneath it, you guys have a lot of, you have your emission control stuff under there. I've deleted all that and I've made a bracket up, and this bracket here goes on here and goes down in here and fits inside this cover. So that's the cover, so it fits inside the cover like that, and then it bolts on there. So that leaves me with, as you can imagine, a whole heap of space inside here. So we got all this big gap there with nothing in there. So I got these voltage stabilizers, so I'm going to put a voltage stabilizer into the coil, and I'm going to put my voltage stabilizer inside here so that it can use the whole tray as a heat sink. There's air that gets through there, so there's enough air getting through there. They'll enable it to be used as a heat sink, and that way it's out of the road. So that one's to the coils, and then underneath the back here, of course, I zip tie the side covers on, because otherwise you go for a ride and you lose your side covers. So for a little bit of insurance, I always have a zip tie on them. But I'm going to put another one in here, back up in under here to the CDI ignition. So that one there will go in up on the back there. So what it does is, so I'll have one here stabilizing the power going to the CDI ignition or to the ignition module, and then have another one here stabilizing the power coming to the coil, so that the coil and the ignition module have stabilized power. And that seems to be the best thing for running on these bikes. So we'll try that, and that should have the coils firing better. Eventually I hope to put upgraded coils on this. So I think these coils here are only around about 15 to 18,000 volts, whereas a lot of the newer coils, like I can buy a new coil off a 1986 Falcon that's got 40,000 volts. So having that higher voltage, the bike will have more horsepower anyhow. And on those little Bosch GT40 coils, there's no problem with them fitting in there. There's enough room to fit them in there. I can fit two of them, and those GT40 coils, I think they're about $43 each, whereas if you're buying the Axel coil, I think you're paying about $300 for it Australian. Big money difference, and the Axel coil I think is only about 30,000 volts, whereas the GT40 coil, like it says in the name, is 40,000 volts. So they're just a little tiny electronic ignition coil, and I think they're actually smaller than that, so what's under there. So maybe just I'll change that. The other thing I've got, which is going on this one, on these here, is I'm going to fit these here an oil cooler here. So my oil cooler's there. I had a long think about it with this, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to run both of the hoses, one into here, one into here on the front of the head, where the cam is. So it'll be here. So one hose will run through the side. So So I'll machine these down, and one will go on here up into there, and the other one will go through, the other hose will go through the other side there and around there, so you won't even really see the hose when it's in there. And why I decide to go that way is quite simply, so that one there will come off this one here. Let's see it up in there. So that one will come off there and then come around this side here. So, and then come around this side here and hook onto the top of this here, which will be mounted there. So why am I mounting it up that way and not down this way? So why am I not mounting it down like that? I'll just come around the other side so that you can see. So I want to mount it up this way. I don't want to mount it down that way. And the reason for that is that when you start the motorbike, you got to fill this thing up with oil. So if I have it up like this, and what it means is that this here is always full of oil. So it's not draining back down into the sump. So when you start it up, it's full of oil. If it was upside down like this and sitting up here like this with the outlets down, that's completely drained out. So when I start the engine, for the first minute or so, it's got to fill this here up with oil from over there. So we're going to be running, we're not going to have oil pressure for, you know, probably half a minute or something when I start it up. That's not going to do my engine very good. So if I have it sitting up this way, it'll always remain full. So all we'll have to do is then just have that. I could put a check valve in it, but every time you put a check valve in oil lines, there's a restriction, or it seizes up, or it stops working, or something like that. So I don't want to do that either. But just having it mounted here, it doesn't get in the road. There on full lock, there's plenty of room, so there's no issue with it there. So that's how they're going to go. And I was going to go from one head to from the back head and the front head one, but then I thought, well, actually here, it coming from the back up to the cooler and then coming back in the head, it may want to starve the back head of oil. Whereas if I come from this one into the oil cooler and then back into this one, all I'm doing is I'm still feeding from this one to this one at the sun, because there's an internal one here, so it's using it as a auxiliary one, but it's not bypassing anything in the head, and I'm not starving the back head of any oil. So that's the reasoning for it. So I'll change these ones here to a different banjo bolt, and I'll just put the on the outer edge of that. Now I can get the banjo bolts, and you might remember I did change this one here to one, and I can get a spacer and put them in and do all that fancy stuff, but if I just put it on the lathe, I'll just knock a hole through here, thread it, and put another banjo bolt and eyelet on that, on the two front ones. That'll be fine for that. So that's really cheap. I can knock a thread in there in about 5 minutes, so that's no issue. So that's where we're at. Tank come up all right. It's only just sitting here because I still got to put the carbies back on, but I got a fair bit to do, but I'll put these stabilizers on. That'll give me stable electricity to the unit, stable electricity to the coils, and that seems to be most of the starting problems. And then soon we'll be Bob's uncle and back on the road with this one. This one here's going all right. They're the new handlebars I've got for this one. I did have a set of inch bars there. I don't think I'm going to use the inch bars, even though they look more robust. It costs a lot of money for. I got to buy handle grips. So I got to buy these here. Don't fit then, and the brake lever doesn't fit, and everything like that. So I'm staying with 7/8. So and that's it. So I've got the tyres off, the wheels off, because they're out getting new tyres on them. But yeah, other than that, I like the Viragos. Cheers.